During World War II, the British government forced every baker in the country to produce only one type of bread. They called it the National Loaf. Citizens complained about the color and taste for 11 years straight. Yet dental health improved. Childhood nutrition markers went up, and anemia rates dropped across the entire population. Today, grocery store bread contains 15 to 25 ingredients, stays soft for weeks, and causes bloating, digestive distress, and mysterious symptoms in millions of people who never had problems before. The bread changed, the wheat changed. The fermentation process disappeared entirely, and nobody told you any of this while selling you sliced convenience in plastic bags. This video breaks down exactly what happened to bread, why your great-grandparents could eat it without problems, and what you can do to find or make bread that actually nourishes rather than harms. Number 1. The National Loaf experiment. German submarines threatened. Britain's grain supply in 1942, white flour wasted nearly 30% of every wheat kernel, discarding the bran and germ that contained most vitamins and minerals. With shipping capacity precious and imports uncertain, the government made a decision that would accidentally improve population health for over a decade. The National Loaf became mandatory for every commercial baker in Britain, starting April 1942. Specifications required 85% extraction rate, meaning millers retained most of the kernel rather than discarding it for pure white flour. Calcium fortification addressed bone health concerns. No baker could legally produce white bread until 1953. Citizens hated it initially. They called the grayish-brown loaves everything from unappetizing to Hitler's secret weapon against British morale. The texture felt denser. The color looked wrong. The taste differed from the fluffy white bread people remembered from before rationing. Yet health metrics told a different story entirely. Dental health improved measurably during rationing years, despite sugar restrictions, creating their own hardships. Childhood nutrition markers showed improvement rather than decline. Anemia rates dropped as iron-rich bran remained in the flour rather than being stripped away. The fiber content reached approximately 8 grams per 100 grams of bread, compared to 2.5 grams in pre-war white bread. B vitamins remained naturally present rather than requiring synthetic enrichment. Iron, zinc, and magnesium stayed in the flour where the wheat plant put them originally. 11 years of mandatory whole grain consumption created the largest unintentional nutritional experiment in modern history. When restrictions finally lifted, bakers immediately returned to white flour production, and consumers happily bought the fluffy pale loaves they remembered. Number 2. The fermentation revolution. Traditional bread required time that modern bakeries refused to spend before industrial production took over. Bakers mixed dough and waited 8 hours minimum before the bread even approached readiness for shaping. Many loaves fermented for 24 hours or longer. This wait served purposes that science only recently began understanding. Long fermentation activates enzymes naturally present in flour. Phytase breaks down phytic acid, a compound that binds to minerals and carries them through your digestive system unabsorbed. Iron, zinc, calcium, and magnesium all become locked up by phytic acid in quickly fermented bread. Studies document 50 to 80% reduction in phytic acid when fermentation extends beyond 12 hours. Gluten proteins change during extended fermentation as well. Enzymes and organic acids partially break down the long protein chains into shorter segments. These shorter chains digest more easily for many people. Some individuals who react to commercial bread tolerate traditionally fermented sourdough without problems. FODMAPs present another fermentation factor. These fermentable carbohydrates cause digestive distress in a significant portion of the population. Long fermentation reduces FODMAP content dramatically. The bacteria and yeasts consume these compounds during their slow work, leaving less to ferment in your gut later. Modern commercial bread ferments for 1 to 3 hours maximum. Bakers add large amounts of commercial yeast plus chemical dough conditioners to force rapid rising. The bread looks similar. The nutrition profile differs completely. The digestive impact differs even more. Number 3. The wheat transformation. The wheat plant itself changed fundamentally after World War II ended. Norman Borlaug developed semi-dwarf wheat varieties in the 1950s and 1960s that yielded dramatically more grain per acre than traditional varieties. His work earned the Nobel Peace Prize and saved an estimated billion people from famine. The unintended consequences only became apparent decades later. Heritage wheat varieties grew 4 to 5 feet tall. Modern dwarf wheat reaches 2 to 3 feet. The shorter plants put more energy into grain production and resist wind damage better. Yields increased enormously, making wheat affordable worldwide and preventing starvation across developing nations. Breeders also selected for higher gluten content because industrial baking requires stronger dough. Heritage varieties typically contained 8 to 12% protein. Modern wheat often exceeds 14%. Higher gluten content means better rise, fluffier texture, and faster processing times. The gluten proteins themselves may have changed structurally during decades of intensive breeding. Some researchers argue that modern wheat gluten differs from heritage wheat gluten at the molecular level. Definitive proof remains elusive. But correlation exists between modern wheat adoption and rising rates of gluten-related health issues. Celiac disease diagnosis rates increased fourfold since the 1950s. Better detection explains part of this increase. Actual incidence increase likely explains the rest. Non-celiac gluten sensitivity affects an estimated 6 to 7% of the population, a condition barely recognized before recent decades. Blaming Norman Borlaug would be foolish and wrong. His work prevented unprecedented famine and human suffering. However, acknowledging that industrial wheat differs from heritage wheat does not diminish his contribution. Both truths can exist simultaneously. Number 4. The additive avalanche. Ingredient lists on commercial bread packages require a chemistry degree to understand. 15 to 25 ingredients appear where traditional bread required only 4 or 5. Each additive serves a production purpose. None of them serve your body. Dough conditioners accelerate processing and improve texture. Datum strengthens dough structure. Sodium stearoyl, lactylate, softens crumb and extends shelf life. Azodicarbonamide bleaches flour and conditions dough using a chemical also found in yoga mats and shoe soles. The European Union and United Kingdom banned azodicarbonamide. The United States still permits it. Potassium bromate strengthens dough and improves rise. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies it as a possible carcinogen. The European Union, United Kingdom, Canada, China, and Brazil all banned potassium bromate. American bakers still use it legally. Industry claims it bakes out during cooking. Studies find residues remain in finished loaves. Preservatives extend shelf life far beyond what any real food should maintain. Calcium propionate prevents mold growth for weeks. Sorbic acid stops microbial activity. Real bread molds within 5 to 7 days because real bread contains nothing that prevents natural decomposition. High fructose corn syrup appears in most commercial bread for sweetness, browning, and preservation effects. Soybean oil adds softness. Vital wheat gluten boosts protein content artificially. Monoglycerides and diglycerides emulsify ingredients that would otherwise separate. Number 5. The milling destruction. Steel roller mills replaced stone grinding in the late 1800s. The change revolutionized flour production and simultaneously removed most of what made flour nutritious. White flour became cheap, uniform, and dead. Stone milling ground the entire wheat kernel together. Heat built slowly, germ oils distributed throughout the flour. Bran particles remained integrated. The flour retained natural color variations and went rancid within weeks because living food contains compounds that degrade over time. Roller mills separate kernel components with brutal efficiency. The starchy endosperm crushes into pure white powder. The nutrient-rich bran and germ peel away and typically become animal feed. The resulting white flour stores indefinitely because nothing nutritious remains to spoil. The wheat kernel contains 3 parts. Bran comprises 14% of the kernel and contains fiber, B vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. Roller milling removes it completely. The germ comprises 3% and contains vitamin E, B vitamins, healthy fats, and protein. Roller milling removes it completely. The endosperm comprises 83% and contains starch and some protein. This is white flour. Populations developed deficiency diseases as white flour consumption increased. Beriberi, pellagra, and anemia spread where whole grain once prevented them. Government enrichment programs began in 1941, adding synthetic B vitamins and iron back into the dead flour. Enrichment creates a peculiar mathematical situation. Millers remove over 20 nutrients during processing. Enrichment adds back 4 or 5 synthetic versions. The marketing calls this enriched flour as though something was gained rather than mostly lost. Fiber never returns. Vitamin E never returns. Zinc, magnesium, manganese, and countless antioxidants never return. The flour contains artificial versions of some B vitamins and one form of iron less bioavailable than the original. Number 6. Your digestive system under attack. Something changed in human digestion over recent decades. Millions of people who ate bread without problems for years suddenly develop symptoms they never experienced before. Bloating after sandwiches, gas after toast, mysterious discomfort that resolves only when bread disappears from the diet. Irritable bowel syndrome affects 10 to 15% of the population. Many patients identify bread as a primary trigger. Removing commercial bread often provides relief that medication cannot match. The bread changed before the symptoms started, but the connection rarely gets mentioned. Non-celiac gluten sensitivity affects an estimated 6 to 7% of people. Symptoms mirror celiac disease without the autoimmune markers. Diagnosis remains controversial because testing proves difficult. Some researchers argue these patients react to fermentation deficiency rather than gluten itself. Traditional sourdough sometimes works for people who cannot tolerate commercial bread. Celiac disease requires absolute gluten avoidance, regardless of fermentation or wheat variety. Approximately 1% of the population has this autoimmune condition. Nothing in this video suggests celiacs should experiment with traditional bread. Complete gluten elimination remains medically necessary. For everyone else, the question becomes whether their symptoms come from gluten itself or from everything else modern bread contains. Rushed fermentation, leaving phytic acid and FODMAPs intact. Higher gluten concentrations from modern wheat. Chemical additives never tested for cumulative effects. Nutrient-stripped flour that provides calories without nourishment. The body handles what it evolved to handle. Humans ate fermented whole-grain bread for thousands of years without epidemic digestive dysfunction. Industrial bread has existed for roughly 60 years. The mismatch between ancestral digestion and modern bread may explain symptoms better than gluten sensitivity ever could. Number 7. Finding real bread today. Commercial sourdough often contains commercial yeast with added vinegar or citric acid for fake temps. Labels lie through terminology that sounds traditional but means nothing. Finding genuine bread requires knowing what to look for and what to avoid. Ingredient lists reveal everything if you read them carefully. Real bread contains flour, water, salt, and starter or yeast, possibly milk, eggs, butter, or sugar for enriched varieties. The entire list should fit on one line and include only words your grandmother would recognize. Red flags include anything you cannot pronounce. Dough conditioners indicate rapid fermentation. Multiple preservatives mean extended shelf life beyond natural limits. Enriched flour means stripped and partially rebuilt nutrition. Any list exceeding 10 ingredients deserves suspicion. Real sourdough comes from bakeries willing to explain their process. Ask about fermentation time. Anything under 8 hours uses shortcuts that eliminate benefits. 12 to 24 hours represents traditional methodology. Cold fermentation in refrigerators can extend apparent time, but slows rather than replaces biological activity. Shelf life tells truth that labels can hide. Real bread molds within 5 to 7 days because nothing prevents natural decomposition. Bread staying soft for weeks contains preservatives regardless of what the ingredient list emphasizes or obscures. Texture provides another indicator. Traditional whole grain bread feels denser than commercial fluff. Chewing takes longer. Satisfaction comes from smaller portions. The experience differs enough that first-time traditional bread eaters sometimes think something went wrong. The bread on supermarket shelves shares almost nothing with bread that humans ate for thousands of years, except general shape and basic function. Fermentation disappeared to save time. Nutrients vanished to extend shelf life. Additives multiplied to accelerate production. Wheat transformed to increase yields. Every change served industrial efficiency, while your digestive system paid the price. World War II bread worked not because wartime somehow created magic, but because necessity forced retention of what industrial convenience later discarded. Whole grains stayed in the flour. Time remained in the process. Simplicity governed ingredients. The National Loaf proved that populations thrive on real bread and suffer when it disappears. Finding or making traditional bread today requires intention that buying commercial loaves does not. Reading ingredients carefully, questioning fermentation claims, seeking bakers who value process over profit, or developing your own sourdough starter all demand effort. That effort reconnects you with food that nourishes rather than merely fills, bread that digests rather than ferments in your gut, nutrition that comes from the wheat itself rather than synthetic fortification, the bread your body actually recognizes as food. Your great-grandparents never wondered whether bread would make them sick. That certainty can exist again.